Welcome to the Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, here to talk about the Never Summer Proto Freeride, a board that got some slight upgrades this year. It has a little bit softer flex and a different carbon mapping throughout the board. I also got this in a 56 versus a 160 that I've tried in the past, so I thought I'd do an updated review. And to give you a short summary, this has a camber profile that doesn't really work for me. The 3 contact points often make the board feel a little hooky. It doesn't track super well, and it's harder for me to access these camber points. But I will say, once you get used to it, it is forgiving, it's easy to ride, it has excellent grip. So a lot of people who just like a board that they can cruise with really enjoy this Proto Freeride. So I rode this primarily with my Union Force bindings and my Nitro Team TLS boots. I got this in a wide variety of conditions this year and compared it against a bunch of different boards. And then I've been riding this even a few years before it came out in a tester model. So I know this board very well in all conditions, and I've put a lot of time on this, not just this year, but a lot in the past. And by the way, this is an honest, objective review for you, the consumer, and I can do this thanks to this wonderful community, and especially thanks to our sponsor, Flower Board Shop. They're family run, they have a large online presence. They've been selling snowboards longer than most resorts have been allowing snowboarders. So if you want to support this wonderful shop and honest, objective content like you see here, click through our links to Flower Board Shop and buy something. It's greatly appreciated. Now, when it comes to sizing, I only rode the 160 in the past. And while that was great for my height and my weight, if I was a size 10, that would have been perfect. However, at a 9, it felt challenging to turn at some times. The 56 feels much better for my boot size, has much better control, but it just felt a little small for me for what this board is supposed to be. So I feel a little bit in between sizes here, and sizing's so subjective. So if you like a little more board underfoot and you have a similar boot size, then 60 will be fine for you. Now, when it comes to shape, this is tapered and directional, but there's not much taper. There's only 5 mil of taper, and it's not that directional. You do have a much bigger nose than the tail. It really tapers down here, and you have a lot less back here. There's a 19 millimeter setback on side cut at what I think is around a 21.5-inch stance width. This is where most brands mark their reference stance. Then, if you want to talk about setback on board versus side cut, you're only looking at 1 inch back from center of board at that same 21.5-inch stance width. And if you set it all the way back with a 22.25-inch stance width, you can get 2 inches back from center of board, so that's not very far back on board in comparison to most freeride boards out there, which are more around 3.5 inches or more. This is actually less than most all mountain boards out there. Now, when it comes to camber profile, this small camber well between the inserts is almost flat, and then it goes to rocker, and then to a mellow camber, and then out to rocker again, and then to the nose and tail. It doesn't feel as stable as you would think for having camber between the feet because it's so small. Then these 2 passive camber profiles, when weighted down, seem to fight each other, and it gets this kind of hooky, semi-catchy feel that never catches an edge truly, or at least it hasn't caught with me, but gives you the illusion that it's going to catch. It doesn't take long to get used to it, but getting off the Proto Freeride and going to the Eclipse with their recurve camber profile with passive bends here, I could access the camber better, but it also felt more stable in all conditions and never had that inconsistent hooky feel. And I think beginner intermediates on up to experts can ride this. It just takes a little time getting used to, and same goes for the new Eclipse. Now, when it comes to edge hold, it grips like a champ. I think the combination of that multi-radius side cut along with 3 camber profiles, when you weight down, it just really presses in here right between the feet and also grips really well past the feet. It's up there with full-on magnet traction, but yet it doesn't grab in softer snow. So if you ride in hard to icy conditions, this could be a great choice for you. Let's talk Proto Freeride Flex. It's got that medium stiff flex. Feels almost more on the medium side, but most of that flex is happening down near the tip and tail with this new reinforcement in this nose area that allows it to be thinner and easier to flex in the tail. And then in the nose, it's a good bit softer. This flex is really soft in this nose area, and then there's a little bit of easier flex here. As you get to this mellow camber area, it feels stiffer, and then between the feet is pretty stiff, and it's reinforced again, and it doesn't have that traditional easy flex between the feet like a lot of Never Summer boards have done in the past. And overall, it's got an easy pop to it. Now, to talk in more detail about this flex, they really did upgrade the flex pattern. It does feel just a touch softer than previous years, and they redid the carbon mapping. Before, there was just an X here and then two lines right in the middle of the tip and tail. But now you can see it's got this webby kind of thing now, and it's definitely more spread out. So while it's a softer flex and it's easier to butter in the tip and tail than it even was before, it has more evenly distributed pop, and that's kind of a fun thing to have with any board. I think I prefer this a little bit better than the old version. And speaking of pop, it doesn't have that easy pop between the feet that the old rocker and camber versions used to have, where there was rocker between the feet and you could weight down, center weight it, and pop. It takes a little more effort to pop from there, and it doesn't feel as poppy because there's no spring there. And the camber is further past the inserts than rocker and camber boards like rocker and camber, Ripsaw, Shockwave. So it's a little harder to access this nose and tail, but if you lean back in enough and engage the camber profile, it pops well enough. I do prefer the recurve a little better for generating your own air, but this isn't bad. And while it can feel a little hooky, when you're on edge, it does track well into little side hits that I hit. And I think if you wanted to go big, you could with this. It has enough dampness, and when on edge, it'll track well into a jump, pop off it pretty well, and land really well because you're very centered on board. This lands switch, no problem, and you could ride switch very well with this, a lot better than you would think for the name Freeride. You take this flex personality and you put it into hard uneven snow and soft uneven snow, and this just handles it like a champ. Even with the nose and tail way off the snow before you weight it down, there isn't a lot of chatter for this kind of multi-camber profile. It really dampens up quickly, and Never Summer's known for that. They put a lot of dampening tech in throughout the board, and they really quiet down the edges and make the board feel much more damp than you would think. So this is a very damp, great all-day ride in just about any kind of condition. Now, when it comes to turning, this was really quick edge to edge for me. The 160 was slower, but again, I already talked about that in sizing. And when I committed to a turn, I just wasn't able to really engage the camber to get that really fun spring out of the turn. The best way to turn it is to press into this area right here. It doesn't hurry you up through the turn as much as the rocker profile did there. Because of that bend, it would create a different radius than what you think the side cut would have. I did find that if I leaned really hard back into the tail and set it all the way back, it could grab a little more, but you can see how far being on the back insert I am from the center point of the camber where all the fun leverage and spring is. So for me, the spring out of the turn wasn't as much fun as some of the recurve boards I tried from Never Summer for 2026. And it wasn't as fun as some of the Shockwave and Ripsaw boards that I tried in the past. I think this more feels like an equivalent to the old rocker and camber, the mellow rocker and the mellow elliptical camber profile. So if you want more spring out of the turn for 2026, you need to look to the recurve boards, possibly the Eclipse. And this turning radius is pretty balanced, and I could make across the groomer carves pretty well. Wasn't maybe the best circle carver, but it's very doable. And more down the line, longer drawn out turns work pretty well. I think because the nose and tail are so far off the snow, and it tracks pretty well as long as you're slightly engaged on edge. If you want a straight line and flat base, it's an unsettling feeling, and you start to get a little chatter and a little instability and a little of that hookiness I talked about in Camber profile. So not the best for bombing, but more than fine for a semi-sustained straight line with the edge slightly engaged. When it comes to base glide, when well waxed, they have upper tier glide, and they can get a little thirsty and they can get a little dry, but they hold their wax long enough for me. Of course, not a fan of die cut, but goddamn, they do it well. I can't even feel it. And when it comes to powder, I found that the Proto Freeride, despite not being that far set back on board, this tail sinks pretty well though, and the nose holds up pretty well, but it's gonna like steeper angle powder because of that center stance, and it doesn't do that well in low angle powder. I had to lean further back into my back leg, and I got some rear leg burn in the little bit of powder that I had with this. I would love to see setback inserts on this like they have with the Benchmark, with the new Proto T3 and the Proto Ultra. That would be amazing. That would really change the dynamic of this board and make it a better low angle powder board, or a board for people like me who just want a little easier setback directional float. Even when I'm in steeper terrain, I just love that feeling personally. But if you like that centered feel, you like a lot of landing gear, and you like to launch off shit in steep terrain, this will be fine for you. So overall, the Proto Freeride with this triple camber tech isn't really for me. I personally prefer the new Eclipse much better than this, which has a similar shape, a little more taper, and their recurve camber profile. I liked the Never Summer Cougar better than both of them. I thought that was an amazing board, but if you want a mellow board that can grip well, if you want something forgiving, this could work for you.
What's up, Good Ride family? Davey boy here, and today I'm going to be giving you a big guy's perspective on the Never Summer Proto Freeride. Bam! Look at this thing. Beautiful graphic. Gotta love it. I rode this like 5 or 6 different days. I got it out in a shallow pow day, like around 6 inches. I got it out on some midwinter cold groomers when we had a dry spell. And I also got it out in the end of the season in some good slush. I'm going to put it back down though, because when talking about this board, the most important piece of tech that's going on is this triple camber tech. And personally, it wasn't my favorite. I tinkered around with this. I switched the stance a little forward and a little back to try to activate maybe different contact points along the triple camber curve on the edge. But I just never really quite engaged this thing properly to feel really good about it. Editing Beastie's other reviews when doing some other triple cambers, I've noticed him talk about how you have to have the leverage with your knees and like you want to be ducked out like an instructor. I'm not very ducked. I kind of have had some knee issues in the past, so my back foot, I normally ride 18 front, 0 in the back. Call that Northwest Kung Fu. And I tried ducking out my back foot a little more. I think I went like -9. That's about as much twist as I feel comfortable with. And I just never really quite got this thing to engage and activate on a turn properly. It just kind of always felt a little twitchy and catchy. I noticed the inconsistency on this board the most when you had to flat base and go into side hits or natural features that I'm jumping off of. It just didn't feel comfortable tracking in. Anytime you get on this center base, it just kind of wants to twitch. It's not very stable, and for me, it made me lose a little bit of confidence, and I came into everything a little slower. It just affected how I was jumping and riding around the terrain for most of the day. My favorite conditions to ride this in is definitely the slush. In the firm snow, it was uncomfortable. I think this board is built incredibly well. The construction of this board with these extra stringers on the end, incredible construction, incredible build, great base glide when well waxed. Everything about this board, the highest of quality. For me personally though, that triple camber, it just ain't my jam. I think there's a percentage of the people out there that will enjoy the triple camber, and if you do, this is a great option. But if you don't have any experience with triple camber, I highly suggest doing a couple demo days before you buy.